Hello again, everyone. Welcome back. This is the weekend market update. We're going to take a look at the focus on the Qs, but I want to start off here with the SPY, the S&P 500, because I want to show you some interesting statistics I came across related to the S&P 500. We'll look at the Qs. I want to look at Bitcoin and then check in on two stocks that have had some heck of runs but got really whacked this last week, Palantir and Nvidia. Okay, so the S&P 500 was up 66 cents on Friday, but down 11.09. We're talking about the SPY, down 11.09 for the week. So kind of an interesting pattern, very similar to what the Qs did, with potentially a hammer forming here on the candlestick. And when I look at it, when I look at a close only on this, it looks like possible 5 waves down. But then we got this little fish hook, so it does kind of make you think, well, maybe, it's still unfolding to the downside. We'll see. The Qs give a little bit different look to that. So if we have some kind of hammer that's going to mean a little bit of a rally, I'm not expecting it to come up and take out the all-time highs. Let's take a look at the Qs. This is a broadening pattern that I'm seeing here on the daily, which kind of ominous. Doesn't mean we can't rally a little bit, but we come down and close below this low here, and I think that's going to signify that a major turn is definitely underway. Let's take a look at the Qs. Now, when you look at the Qs, we see the broadening pattern on a weekly chart, which is even more ominous. So this is going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. And then here's this hammer that formed. This is a beautiful hammer here on the daily chart on the Qs. Now, when I go to the close only here, this does look a little more like possible little 5-wave move down, and maybe the hammer means we're going to get a little counter trend move back up, 50% retracement or so. We'll see whether what we start to get Monday, Tuesday. We got a little bit of this, looks like a descending type of triangle from a traditional chart pattern type of thing. You always look at where's the horizontal line. So kind of wondering if maybe we get a little bounce and then we roll right on back over. The other thing on the Qs, look how we came right down to the 55-day moving average. Now, whether you use the 50 or 55, they're pretty doggone close no matter what. It touched it before at the beginning of September, but we haven't closed below the 55-day moving average since all the way back here on April 30th. So it's been quite a while now since we've had any kind of decent corrective. Of course, everybody's been talking about that too. I want to look at the LE wave pattern I've got here. So this is what I'm looking at. It hasn't really changed over the last couple of weeks now. I mean, we've got pretty bearish engulfing candle that formed here on the weekly, and it's almost like we've had 3 of these now since, when was this, July? So since the end of July, last week of July, we've had 3 of these. Is the third time a charm? You kind of wonder. I mean, you look back up in here in December, bearish engulfing, January, and then February, and third time, and then boom, the floor falls out. So it's going to be interesting to see if are we finally going to get a decent amount of corrective activity in here, and this coming week I think is going to be very interesting. So that's what I'm looking at. Let's see, I'm looking down my notes. I think the other interesting thing though, a hammer needs to form at the end of a trend, a downtrend, okay, for a legit hammer to form. This hasn't been much of a downtrend. I mean, it's pretty substantial. It's a lot more substantial than anything we've seen recently, but it's not a major downtrend, which makes me think, because it's been, 7 days? Yeah. And so maybe we're just going to get, a little bit of a bounce, a little bit of a counter trend bounce. I'll tell you the other thing I want to mention. See this little pattern with these 3 dark candles? Now, at first I thought, is that the 3 black crows that they talk about with Japanese candlesticks? No. 3 black crows are descending dark in a row. This was not that, but it still just had that ominous look to it, and you saw the same thing in the SPY. You saw the same thing, except for the fact in the Qs, you got higher highs, which I thought was really, really interesting. And then what I pointed out to my members is on this last day, this is what Tom DeMark calls a camo sell, which is his short-term abbreviation for camouflaged sell. And sure enough, we just broke hard the next day and then just continued to sell off from there. So we'll see if we have the ability to bounce coming into this coming week or not. Okay, so that's where we are with the Qs. Bitcoin. Bitcoin sending us a message. Well, let's take a look at the weekly first. Let's come over here, and I've shown this before. I believe I've shown it here on YouTube. Since the halving, we're talking about 17 months, and here we are just a little over 17 months past the halving. And now, how much of a downtrend are we going to get? The last two times was pretty substantial pullback in here. And these lines down here are out of whack because, hold on a minute. There we go. Because I drew the lines in semi-log with semi-log on. So I turned it back on because usually I will show semi-log when I have a scale of this degree. Anything greater than 3-to-1, you want to show semi-log to show it in proportion for the moves. So that's where the channel that's formed here is doing what it's doing. So we didn't quite make it to the top of that channel. Okay. But right now, the big key that I'm watching is this, the end of 17 months, and it looks like we got a peak that we're coming down out of. Let me just go back over like this. And then the other thing I want to point out is, where are we sitting with Bitcoin? In terms of the message, we're sitting down here at the June lows, right? We're at the June lows. And I'll show you this right here on the Bitcoin futures. Okay, so to me, we are right at support. And where is that? The 99 to $100,760. And this is 99.90 basically. So this little zone between 99 and say 101 is where support came in. We closed below that. And I think, it's just going to break big time. And I think that this has implications for the market. What we really got to ask ourselves is the fact that it's at June lows right now. What does that mean for the Qs and the S&P when June lows are all the way back over here at like the 525 level on the Qs, and on the SPY down here, like 595 kind of thing, 594, 590-ish. Yeah, a long way away. So that's going to be really, really interesting to see how this plays out. And if we get a close below 99 on Bitcoin futures. Okay, so enough on that. Let's take a look at what happened on two key stocks, Palantir and Nvidia. Okay, Palantir. Palantir's had one heck of a run. I mean, there is no doubt about it. It's had one heck of a run. On Friday, up $2.88. That is not a hammer, just FYI. But, we broke down and broke below this trend line on Thursday. Now we've bounced and then, gapped down, pushed, came down near this low, around the low here, around 169. And it was 168.91. And then rallied back up, basically back up to the trend line for all intents and purposes. But look on the week, down $22.54, a bearish engulfing type candle. Okay, very, very bearish. So it's going to be interesting to see. Number one, we have to get follow through. You got to take out last week's low. So you need to, basically take out Friday's low and get some continuation for this to be a valid signal in terms of what's happening in here. But we had a pretty big gap down that occurred, and this was on Tuesday, right? So not a pretty picture. Wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, look at the divergences that have been showing up in here. Wouldn't be surprised at all to see quite a bit of follow through down to the downside here in Palantir. And then when you take a look at Nvidia, Nvidia was up 7 cents on Friday. I'm not sure that this is I don't think that this is a hammer. To be a valid hammer from a quote unquote pure candlestick pattern definition, it needs to be this little shadow down here. It needs to be 2 to 3 times the width of this body right here. And I do not believe that it is. If it is 2, it's barely 2. So anyway, big downdraft, big bearish engulfing candle here on a weekly chart. Major divergence that's showing up in here. And again, also wouldn't be surprised at all to see this pull back quite a bit. Now, it did get down below the 55-day moving average in here, got down close to where we had lows in October, and then some buying came in. But, pretty big whack here in Nvidia. And a similar kind of thing was happening in the semiconductors, bearish engulfing in the semiconductors, and pretty big pullback in here, although they didn't quite get to the 55-day moving average. So that's where we sit. Some of these AI-related stocks are getting taken out and kind of getting shot, at least short term anyway. So we'll see what kind of follow through we get. All right, that's it for this weekend. If you felt like the video was helpful, give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber to the channel, hit that little subscriber button and head on over to joehenches.net. Check out the website. All right, everyone, have a great week. We'll talk to you on the next video.